Ben Shapiro, a devout Jew, has been confronted about his views on Jesus on numerous occasions, some good and some incredibly hostile. The least confrontational was during his interview with Joe Rogan, in which Joe confronted Ben about who he thought Jesus was.
No. We don't even believe he was a prophet.
What do you think he was? What do you guys think he was?
What do I think he was historically? I think he was a Jew who tried to lead a revolt against the Romans and got killed for his trouble. Just like a lot of other Jews at that time who were crucified for trying to lead revolts against the Roman and got killed for their trouble.
So he became legend in story, and it became a bigger and bigger deal as time went on.
Yeah, he had a group of followers, and then that gradually grew, and then
Do you think he was resurrected?
No, that's not a Jewish belief.
Okay, I just want to check.
Yeah, no, we're not into
We're
not into miracle stories. No, that's
no?
not. No.
You don't have any miracles?
No, not by Jesus.
This confrontation seemed friendly rather than hostile, similar to his confrontation with his co-worker Andrew Clavin.
So Ben took a handful and he ate it, and the assistant came running back in and said, "I just checked and I was wrong, it's not the kosher popcorn." So I said to him, "Well, now that you're not a Jew anymore, this might be a good time to accept Jesus as your personal faith."
In Ben's conversation with Rogan, it wasn't very uncomfortable since Rogan was just trying to understand as opposed to argue with Ben or change his mind. But we can't say the same for Ben's interview with popular skeptic Michael Shermer. Michael Shermer, known for being an outspoken atheist, would be one of the last people that you'd expect to be confronting Ben about his views on Jesus. But he did.
Well, I got you here. I want to push you on something. Why don't you accept Jesus as the Messiah?
Okay, so the reason that I don't accept Jesus as the Messiah is because I think that a lot of the arguments so Jesus as the Messiah is a different figure than anything that exists inside Judaism. So when people say that Judaism predicts the coming of Christ, the change in the nature of what Christ is, what a Messiah would be, is different from Judaism to Christianity. So Judaism never posited that there would be God come to earth in physical form, and then acting out in the world in that way. Judaism posits that God is beyond space and time. Occasionally he intervenes in history, but he doesn't take physical form. It's one of the key beliefs of Judaism, actually, is an incorporeal God. So that means that the idea is actually foreign to Judaism of a merged God-man who is God in physical form, but then dies and is resurrected and all this.
Christians claim the Old Testament predicts it's going to come, so you disagree.
Well, I disagree because I think a lot of the verses that are cited are actually misreads of the Hebrew. So actually, I read Hebrew, so I think that again.
Now, even though Shermer started the conversation by saying he was going to push Ben on his views on Jesus, he still tried to confront Ben by using the common ground that they had in rejecting Jesus as the Messiah. And this isn't the first time that someone tried to confront Ben by using the common ground, as we saw in Ben's conversation with Christian pastor John MacArthur. However, this one was still inherently more confrontational given his attempt to convert Ben to Christianity, which seemed to make Ben slightly uncomfortable. And to be fair, in some ways, I can relate to Ben being uncomfortable while being proselytized, given the time that a subscriber showed up on my doorstep fully convinced that he knew who the Antichrist was and tried to get me to deliver that message to my subscriber base. When that happened, I learned the hard way that anyone can find anything on the internet, including your first legal name, your home address, your phone number, and even your relatives. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura identifies those data brokers exposing your information as well as telemarketers and automatically submits opt-out requests on your behalf. They'll even opt you out of junk mail and telemarketing lists. In addition, Aura also monitors your emails and passwords to see if they've been in a data breach and exposed on the dark web. And if that wasn't enough, their app also features a VPN, a password manager, real-time identity theft monitoring, internet parental controls, and protects your devices from malware. So in other words, Aura has almost every internet safety tool you'll ever need all inside of one app. And the best part is, if you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial by going to aura.com/whatdoyoumeme or by scanning the QR code on the screen. So go there now to see just how much of your private information they can find exposed in just 2 weeks. Now, back to the video.
No, I think what Jesus did in the Sermon on the Mount was elevate the teaching of the rabbis. Jesus was the purest Jew that ever lived because he understood the elevation of the law to the heart and the soul. So I don't see Judaism and Christianity as antithetical. I see them as perfectly complementary, so that what the prophets said the Messiah would be, Jesus was. That fulfills it. The sacrificial system ends. It's never been reinstituted again. The one sacrifice, the writer of Hebrews says, he perfected forever those that are sanctified by his one offering.
So even though MacArthur tried to reason with Ben from their shared beliefs in the Old Testament scriptures, Ben didn't appear to be too bothered by MacArthur's arguments. And this is why Ben's conversation with philosopher and theologian William Lane Craig is currently Ben's most popular confrontation about Jesus to date. In this one, Ben was pretty engaged, and him and William Lane Craig went back and forth until something unexpected happened. Take a look.
What is the proof that Jesus was who he says he is in the Gospels?
Well, first we need to establish who he thought he was. When you look at the religio-historical context of the life and ministry of Jesus, I think you can show that among the historically authentic words of Jesus were claims that he thought he was the Jewish Messiah.
So, from the Jewish perspective, this narrative has some holes in sort of Jewish philosophy. The idea of the Messiah as embodiment of God is something that's foreign to Jewish religious philosophy going all the way back to the beginning. So even the idea that the Sanhedrin would be questioning him in those terms and would get from that what he means is, I am God, which would be a much more punishable offense, presumably that would be actual blasphemy. It's an oddity.
Being the Messiah, you're right, in and of itself isn't a blasphemous claim. But to claim to be the Son of God in a unique sense, and then especially the Son of Man prophesied by Daniel, sitting at the right hand of the power, that is truly blasphemous and is sufficient for his condemnation. Now, the question, I think, that is raised by your
interpretation,
question, Ben,
yes.
your interpretation, Ben, is this. Why should we believe Jesus' reinterpretation of the Messiah rather than the one that the chief priests and the people held? And I think the answer to that is his resurrection from the dead.
When it comes to the resurrection, why is resurrection proof of divinity? So Lazarus is resurrected.
That was why I wanted to emphasize the religio-historical context. And the resurrection of Jesus is not just the resurrection of any old body. It's the resurrection of the man who claimed to be Messiah, Son of God, and Son of Man, and who was crucified for those allegedly blasphemous claims. If God has raised this man from the dead, then he has, I think, unequivocally and publicly vindicated those allegedly blasphemous claims.
So we can have the historical argument back and forth, obviously, and I think that there are arguments that you can make. I think there are arguments that I can make, but I honestly find them relatively uninteresting, is the truth, simply because I'm not sure that we're going to come to any sort of consensus on them.
No. Unlike previous conversations, Ben seemed to be ready to respond to William Lane Craig's arguments for Jesus, but William Lane Craig seemed to be even more prepared to respond to Ben's responses. Some interpreted Ben wanting to change the subject as Ben avoiding the facts that he just couldn't refute. And it appears that even William Lane Craig might have thought that was the case.
And I noticed that when he started pressing me about the resurrection of Jesus, and I started laying out the evidence, he retreated very quickly and changed the subject, which I thought was sort of interesting. But I greatly enjoyed our conversation.
But even with that being said, Ben and Craig's conversation was still overall friendly and cordial, which was not the case when it comes to Candace Owens' confrontation with Ben. Now, this one had some backstory that we won't be able to fully flesh out here, but to make a long story short, there seemed to be some hostility brewing between Ben and Candace due to Candace's take on the Israel and Palestine war, leading them to a sharp argument that unfolded on Twitter. Seemingly being a response to the tension between her and Ben, Candace tweeted some Bible verses, ending with, "You cannot serve both God and money," and also added in a follow-up tweet saying, "Christ is king." And taking this as being directed toward him, Ben responded with the tweet saying, "Candace, if you feel that taking money from Daily Wire somehow comes between you and God, by all means, quit." So after seeing all of Ben's clips talking about Jesus that I could find, including the times when he wasn't being confronted about Jesus, it seems to me that Ben simply does not like being confronted about Jesus. For example, in this podcast episode, when the host pressed Ben on his beliefs on Jesus, Ben seems to get really uncomfortable and then tries to end the conversation by saying,
it's a conversation that it's interesting to have. I have, the truth is I have more fun talking about the stuff that we have in common rather than stuff we differ on.
Yeah. Now, given Ben's reactions and how he's known for his mantra of facts don't care about your feelings, it seems like whenever Ben is confronted with facts about Jesus, he doesn't want to engage with the facts. Most of the time, he just says how Jews don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah, or that Jesus being resurrected is not a Jewish belief that Jews embrace, and so on. But he never really seems to engage with the facts on their own. And This is actually kind of interesting because if you think about it, Ben's entire complaint about the left is that they don't engage with the facts and that the only reason that they hold these beliefs is because other people give them those beliefs. But on the surface, he seems to be doing the same thing when confronted about Jesus. Now, there's multiple possible explanations for this that could be given, of course, so let me go ahead and ask you, what do you think is the reason for why he seems to get uncomfortable when talking about Jesus? Let me know your thoughts down below, and the next time that you hear Ben Shapiro saying,
Facts don't care about your feelings.
what are you gonna say? What do you mean?